Professor Lena Reyes kept 6 chalk-dusted star maps in her campus office, but only one coffee mug. Every September, she changed the maps as methodically as she changed the filters on her telescope. Yet the mug, chipped, cobalt, and speckled like a miniature knight, remained. When the director of the San Martin Planetarium asked her to curate the winter show, Lena filled the mug, studied the vacant seat opposite her desk, and recognized she would need a collaborator who understood stories as well as she understood spectra. That was how Milo Argyros, visiting mythologist from Thessaloniki, entered her orbit. Milo arrived carrying a battered leather folder that smelled faintly of basil. The folder was thick with photocopies, handwritten translations, and postcards of ancient mosaics. His first sentence to Lena was not a greeting, but a question. Do you believe a constellation is an open book or a closed one? The professor blinked, amused. Neither, she replied. It's a patterned sky, but patterns invite readers. That earned a curious smile from Milo, and the conversation unspooled into the afternoon, racing from Babylonian tablets to Kepler's calculus. The planetarium's director found them hours later, leaning over a projection table whose simulated stars drifted in slow procession, as if eavesdropping on their debate. The commission was clear: create a new immersive presentation that wove together the celestial and the archetypal, linking the winter constellations to ancient love stories. But what excited Lena and Milo was the unspoken freedom. They got to choose which loves, not the tidy romance of commercial astrology posters, but the raw, contradictory stories that survived across cultures. The yearning of Vega and Altair, divided by the Milky Way, the complicated devotion of Perseus and Andromeda, the sisterhood of the Pleiades chased across the sky. They established a rhythm: mornings in Lena's observatory for technical choreography, afternoons in the planetarium's archive sifting vellum and microfilm, evenings on the rooftop marking alignments with chalk and red flashlights. At first, their conversations orbited the work. Lena explained how the precession of Earth's axis had shifted Orion's belt since Homer. Milo countered with how oral bards shifted epithets to fit new dactyls. She diagrammed the elliptical orbit of the star Algol. He recited the Arabic folk story that named it the Ghoul. Slowly, the ledger of the show's sections filled. I, beginnings of light. 2, lovers in pursuit. 3, reunion. The act titles, Milo joked, sounded like chapters of both a romance and a physics textbook, which, Lena admitted, was precisely the point. One cold night in October, they drove 2 hours into the Sierra Morena to catch the Draconid meteor shower. The portable projector needed a new backdrop segment, and Lena wanted footage of real streaks, not digital renderings. They set up cameras in a sandstone clearing above a silent reservoir. Wind combed the tall grass. Starlight pooled in the valleys. Between exposures, they talked. What first pulled you to mythology? Lena asked, tightening a lens. Milo, reclined on a blanket, watched the sky as if reading Braille. I blame my grandmother, he said. When I was 7, she told me stories about constellations loud enough to drown out the gunfire from the Civil War she'd fled decades earlier. Her voice built a shelter, so I kept enlarging it with more stories. Lena considered that. That's beautiful, she said softly. He glanced over. And you? What turned you toward stars instead of, I don't know, marine biology? She exhaled a laugh. My father was a sailor. He taught me to navigate by Polaris on a night when our boat was the smallest speck in the Caribbean. The sea scared me, but the sky didn't. I chose the constant of the two. The meteor shower intensified, white needles stitching the darkness, and their cameras clicked quietly until dawn. Back in the city, Milo would write a monologue about threads of falling fire sewing distances together, and Lena would engineer the planetarium's dome to sprinkle each audience member with a simulated pinpoint of light at that exact moment. But before any of that, as the first twilight glimmered in the east, the two academics sat shoulder to shoulder, warmed by a shared thermos, and felt something neither plotted nor footnoted. In the weeks that followed, subtler signals multiplied. Lena discovered that Milo left spiral notebooks on her desk filled with marginalia, arrows connecting equations to epics, commentary that blended scholarly citation with sly jokes. Galileo would have killed for a Bluetooth spectroscope. She pretended annoyance, yet color rose under her olive skin each time. Milo, for his part, learned to recognize the sharp tap of Lena's stylus before she spoke, like a conductor's baton. He found himself timing his presentations to that rhythm, pleased whenever her brow smoothed in approval. By November, they hit their first obstacle, the climax of the show. They had planned to end with Perseus rescuing Andromeda, but during a script reading, Lena frowned. "It feels too neat," she said. "He slays the monster, marries the princess, happily ever after. Not every love story or constellation resolves." Milo surveyed the dome's grid of pinpricks. "You'd prefer ambiguity?" She nodded. "I'd prefer honesty. Stars die, migrations fail, orbits decay. Yet in that impermanence is something more powerful." Milo went silent. That night, he rummaged through his leather folder in his hotel room, hunting for an obscure Thracian tale. The story of Hellas, a shepherdess who fell for a carpenter named Menon. They promised to meet every full moon by the river, but political turmoil forced Menon to flee. Hellas waited so long that the gods, pitying her vigil, transformed her into the Great Bear, forever circling the pole, never setting. The lover frozen in waiting resonated with Lena's longing for authenticity. Milo typed a draft scene where the planetarium's dome would rotate around Ursa Major while narrators spoke of love that outlasts separation, not with triumph, but with endurance. The next afternoon, Milo delivered the scene. Lena read it in silence, a thumb pressed to her lips. When she finished, she looked up, eyes bright. "Yes," she said. "This is the heart." She stood so abruptly, her chair rolled backward. "Come on." Without explanation, she led him up the observatory stairs to the research telescope. She keyed codes, swung the dome open, and invited him to the eyepiece. Through meters of polished mirrors, Milo saw the pinwheel of M81, a galaxy nestled in Ursa Major's flank, ancient light crossing 12 million years before entering his cornea. "That," Lena whispered beside him, "is what it means to wait." The rehearsal calendar grew ruthless. Lighting cues, soundtrack edits, emergency recalibrations of the dome's subwoofers. Each demanded exact hours. During technical runs, volunteers filled auditorium seats, while Lena stalked the control booth with a headset, barking corrections. Milo stood center stage with a handheld mic, coaxing narration timing, modulating his voice to match digital auroras spilling across the ceiling. Yet late at night, they still found fragments of privacy amid the planetarium's corridors. On the Tuesday before opening, Milo carried 2 takeaway containers of empanadas up to the empty dome. Lena, barefoot, balanced on the stage's lip, gazing upward at a testing pattern. A monochrome grid of latitudes. "Looks like graph paper for gods," he joked. She smiled, accepting a container. They sat on the cool floor, backs against the rostrum. "You know," Milo began, "Hellas and Manon never see each other again in any version of the myth." Lena chewed thoughtfully. "But the story survives because people look up and imagine the reunion anyway." She met his eyes. We project hope onto the void. He felt words thrumming in his chest, suddenly fragile. Instead, he broke off a corner of pastry and offered it. Their fingers brushed. Electricity sharper than any astrologer's prophecy passed through them, and both instinctively looked at the grid of simulated lines, as though the answer might be there. Dress rehearsal arrived storm-laden. Rain drummed the telescoping roof. Thunder rattled the lighting trusses. A citywide power surge flickered the projectors, wiping lens calibrations. Lena's shoulders tightened like drawn bowstrings. As technicians rebooted systems, she paced until Milo intercepted her. He pressed a small card into her hand, a vintage postage stamp showing the dove of Aphrodite. "For luck," he said. She traced the dove's silhouette. "Superstition from a mythologist?" "Scholarship," he corrected. "And affection." The word hovered between them, vibrating richer than thunder. Before she could reply, the control room reported readiness. She tucked the stamp into her pocket near her racing heart. The rehearsal moved with nervous grace. When the simulated Milky Way unfurled overhead, an audible gasp rippled through the volunteers. Milo's narration, equal parts lecture and poem, guided them across the Japanese tale of Oriheim and Hikoboshi, the lovers allowed to meet only once a year when magpies form a bridge of wings. As he spoke, a digital flock arced across the dome, each star a beating feather. At the desk, Lena watched an audience couple reach for each other's hands. Satisfaction warmed her. Yet, when she glanced at Milo's upturned face under the artificial starlight, she felt something more treacherous than professional pride. After the volunteers left, Milo found Lena inspecting the central projector's lens cap. "We did it," he said. She nodded, exhaustion softening her features. "One more night until the premiere." He hesitated, then, "Walk with me?" They exited through a maintenance door to the balcony. Rain had ceased. Clouds tore open, revealing real constellations, glimmering above the city's sodium haze. For the first time in weeks, they were under the authentic sky instead of its replica. "Which story belongs to us?" Lena asked, arms folded against the chill. Milo considered. "Maybe we're still writing it." He gestured upward. "Look, Gemini ascending. Twin stars not identical, but bound." She smiled. "Neither of us is anyone's twin." "True," he conceded. "Then perhaps we're the Pleiades, a cluster, gravitationally bound, yet each star distinct." She laughed, shaking her head. "Seven sisters? I think not." Silence settled, comfortable. Finally he spoke, voice low. "Perhaps we are simply ourselves, finding an orbit." He stepped closer. Vapors of breath mingled. She did not move away. Yet the moment shattered when her phone buzzed. Equipment alarm in the control room. Duty reclaimed them. They parted wordlessly, returning to cables and logbooks. Opening night arrived crisp, the sky a perfect ink above the planetarium's glass atrium. Tickets had sold out weeks earlier. Astronomers, historians, schoolchildren clutching glow-in-the-dark stickers. Elderly couples eager for date night beneath simulated heaven. As VIPs sipped sparkling cider, Lena checked voltages. Milo paced backstage rehearsing Greek fragments under his breath. When the auditorium lights dimmed, she slipped into the control booth. He strode to the center stage circle, spotlight kissing his shoulders. "Good evening," Milo began. "Welcome to Celestial Loves, Myths of the Night Sky. We invite you to listen with both heart and mind." The dome refracted midnight blues. Stars ignited. Lena's fingers danced over sliders as percussion rumbled, mimicking the universe's first heartbeat. The show unfolded flawlessly. Orion swaggered across the vault, his luminous belt braided with Sumerian legend. Perseus soared over a marble sea to rescue Andromeda, but the lovers dissolved into data points illustrating stellar distances. Science unraveling illusion. Applause sustained each transition. Midway, Milo addressed the Chinese story of Vega and Altair, star-crossed across the silvery bridge. Couples in the audience leaned together. Then came Hellas. A hush draped the seats as the dome pivoted around Ursa Major, giant and slow. Milo narrated the shepherdess's vigil, while a lone violin sighed. On cue, Lena faded audience lighting to near darkness. Only the great bear revolving, relentless, patient. Love, Milo said, voice steadier than he felt, is not always a rescue. Sometimes it is a revolution, a turning without end. The final line slid from his mouth like an undiscovered moon. Sometimes it is two souls who choose the same orbit. At that moment, the program called for a quiet blackout before the finale. But Lena, inexplicably, overrode the cue. A pale amber follow spot remained on Milo. He looked up, confused. Through her headset, she whispered his name. He glanced toward the booth. A technician frowned at Lena, mouthing, "Your call." She nodded once. Milo returned to the mic. "Ladies and gentlemen, if you'll indulge an unscripted footnote." Murmurs rose. Lena's pulse hammered. In studying these legends, I've rediscovered something the ancients knew. We map our yearnings onto constellations, not to escape life, but to name it. Tonight, under this dome, I want to name my own. He turned, facing the control booth, though under the darkness he could barely see her. Professor Reyes, you are my guiding star, constant and brilliant. I would share every orbit with you, if you wish. Gasps erupted, followed by anticipatory silence. Inside the booth, Lena's vision blurred. The director, aghast, signaled for her to cut the spotlight, but she raised a hand. She pressed the talk button. Her voice projected gently through the auditorium. Dr. Argyros, when sailors pass Cape Horn, they salute the sky because no lighthouse is bright enough. You have been that brightness for me. Yes, applause thundered, filling the dome like rain on a drum. She triggered the finale. A cascade of digital shooting stars radiated from the zenith, their paths converging on an empty swath now labeled Future Constellation Name Pending. The audience cheered. Milo bowed, embarrassment and joy mingling on his cheeks. After the crowd dispersed, parents herding sleepy children, journalists scribbling headlines about planetarium proposal, Milo climbed the control booth ladder. Lena met him halfway, arms trembling, unsure if from adrenaline or relief. They paused on the metal landing where cables hummed like distant quasars. No more metaphors, she said. Just this. She kissed him, the taste of starlight glaze from concession stand candy faint between them. Somewhere beneath, janitors swept popcorn. Beyond, Orion hunted eternally. But inside that small booth, two scholars rewrote their coordinates. Winter settled over the city. The show extended through spring by popular demand. High schoolers wrote essays about Helice's endurance. Retirees returned with opera glasses to inspect the simulated nebulae. After each performance, Lena and Milo lingered in the dome, tweaking angles, adding Easter egg constellations that spelled secret messages in Morse if anyone cared to decode them. During real night skies, they visited the observatory together, cataloging variable stars while trading stories of their childhoods. When the Leonid meteor shower erupted in November, they returned to the reservoir clearing. This time, Milo brought a ring fashioned as an open orbit, silver band circling an empty space for light to pass through. Under a rain of meteors, he asked another question. She answered with another yes. Somewhere, perhaps. Hellas kept turning, and Vega still waited across the river of heaven. Yet, If you visited the San Martin Planetarium months later, you might notice a new line on the digital firmament, a faint, unclassified pairing of two stars near Gemini's foot, labeled by the software as Object LNM 2027. No myth yet assigned, no cautionary tragedy, merely a note in the margins of the galaxy that two observers, while charting ancient loves, had discovered their own and had fixed it, not in stone or parchment, but in shared observation. The story went like this. Under the guise of scholarship, two people compared the maps of sky and soul, found congruence, and elected to stay in one another's gravitational field. Astronomers called it a binary. Poets called it destiny. Lena and Milo simply called it home.